Good evening and welcome.
And who is our guest?
I have no idea.
Oh, not this again.
I know, but one thing I do know is it's Codes of the Unknown.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening and welcome.
It's done. Sorry.
What's going on there?
Sorry about this, people. I don't know. Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. So tonight I joined with Preston Dennett. Little introduction. Began investigating UFOs and paranormal in 1986. Discovered that his family, friends, and co-workers dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he's interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal. He's a investigator, MUFON, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 28 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. Several of his books have been as an UFO best compressed.
Freezing. I think you might have finished. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the show. I'm super excited.
Thank you for joining us. It's brilliant. Right, I'm going to dive in with the first question then. I read that you got interested in this because family and friends and co-workers were having unexplained events. Can you give us a few examples of those?
Yeah, for sure. I came to this field very skeptical. I did not believe in UFOs. And I think the first time I really kind of wondered about it was when my brother Mark, my older brother, he's, 5 years older than me or so,
Right.
came running into the house. Mind you, I was like 14 years old. And he said, I just saw a UFO. And I just said, shut up, Mark. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I ignored him, seriously. And it wasn't until 1986, as Andy mentioned, I was actually watching the news, and I heard a report on the news talking about a sighting over Alaska. And that interested me enough to go ask Mark again what he saw.
Yeah.
And he revealed an amazing encounter. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And mind you, this is my brother. I know he's not lying. I've known him my whole life. And he described how he was driving with his two friends, Greg, who I know, and Phil. And they were driving through Reseda, that's in Southern California.
Yeah.
And saw this saucer, your classic saucer, metallic, a dome on top, little colored lights all around it, and totally silent. It was just about 100 feet away, very close at treetop level. And they chased it down the road. They actually chased this thing for about 15 minutes, past other cars chasing it.
Wow.
So yeah, Marco's describing all of this, and I'm like, seriously? Are you kidding me? He's like, Preston, if you don't believe me, go ask Phil, go ask Greg. You know them. I'll give you their number. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And they said the same story. And that got me interested in asking other people. And boy, what a shock to find out that my sister-in-law had a sighting. She had 2 friends with her, just unexplained lights over Van Nuys Air Force Reserve Base.
Right.
But she later described, and this really knocked me over, a face-to-face encounter with 2, what we now know are gray type ETs, gray aliens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't even know what grays were.
No.
At the time, and certainly not even the time she described it to me. So,
did she have missing time from that?
No, I asked her. She didn't see a UFO, no missing time. She just saw these 2 figures when she was walking near her home.
Wow.
This was, again, in Van Nuys. It was late at night in 1978 or thereabouts. And she was right up next to them. I mean, she was walking on the sidewalk, and they were right there in the courtyard in front of Stagg Street Elementary School.
Wow.
Under the floodlights. She thought at first they were children dressed up in costume or something. But she looked at them about 10 feet away and said they had completely white faces, chalk white, huge, large, dark eyes, were wearing olive green jumpsuits, giant heads, your typical gray.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to run away in a panic, so she just walked away as fast as she could and never looked back. Wow,
10 feet is close, though, isn't it? That is close.
Yeah, and she's an artist. She's got like an eidetic memory.
Yeah.
She described this in detail. I was going out of my mind because I had just read Bud Hopkins' book, Missing Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a bestseller yet. It was just, a hardback.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I brought it up at work, where I work. As back then doing data entry mostly, bookkeeping, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And boy, it was so upsetting to find out that the lady I worked with, right next to her desk was next to mine. She and her whole family had an encounter. It was this star-like light darting around for about an hour. I'm like, are you kidding? Couldn't it have been a helicopter? She's like, no, it had made no sound. It would stop. It would zip across the sky.
Yeah.
And in walks Dorothy. And if you know Dorothy, you'd fall in love with her. She's just completely unfiltered.
Yeah.
Really outgoing. And she says, oh, UFOs? I saw one. And I'm looking up at her. Oh, Dorothy, what are you talking about? She said, no, for real. When I was a kid, me and my best friend and my mom were driving home from the library. Well, actually, she saw it when she walked out of the library at exactly 9 o'clock. Classic saucer drops down out of the sky and is hovering right across the street over the telephone wires.
Wow.
And again, a perfect saucer, colored lights, totally silent. And they run into the car and they're driving home. And Dorothy's like, Mom, it's following us. It's following over our car. I ended up interviewing her mom and her best friend.
Yeah.
Here's where it got really weird. She says, Preston, I live 5 minutes from the library. We're right next door. It takes us 5 minutes to get home. I know we left at 9 p.m. because that's when the library closed.
Yeah.
And they got home. They ran upstairs and watched this object dart away, turned and looked at the clock, and the clock said 10:15.
Wow.
Right.
They had lost over an hour. She's like, Preston, I don't even know what happened to the time. She'd never heard of missing time.
Well,
Right.
no. Yeah.
And she'd never read a UFO book in her life. She had no idea. I told her, I'm like, Dorothy, I think there might be more to this than you remember.
You've been somewhere.
Yeah. So, sorry, I missed the first part of this. How long ago was this, did you say?
This was in 1986 when I found
Right.
all this out.
Okay.
But her experience was in the late I think it was 58 or so.
Oh,
Wow.
right. So,
So
wow.
some time back. And it was, again, in Southern California,
Yeah.
in the middle of the city, actually, Koreatown, which is a part of LA,
Yeah.
very densely populated. But yeah, all these people I knew were having encounters. And I was so upset.
Yeah.
It was not good news.
No.
I was scandalized because I felt like they had lied to me
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
not telling me. I was mad because this wasn't taught in schools.
Yeah.
I was finding out that there was a UFO cover-up using my tax dollars. Ours. I mean, this really made me angry and upset.
Mm.
It took me a year to sort of come to terms with this. I still haven't. Who am I kidding? That's why I'm still doing this work, because it completely freaked me out. I mean, I just can't get over it. We're being, maybe invaded isn't the right word.
Well, maybe a slow trickle.
Visited.
Yeah.
So have you had your own encounter then?
Yes. Not until I started investigating it, but I'm like, hey, wait, if my brother has seen one, 2 of my friends, 3 people at work, why haven't I? What's going on?
Yeah.
So I joined MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. I became a field investigator. And each time I would interview someone, and if I got a recent case, like, oh, I just saw it last night, I'd be like, I'm coming over. Can I camp out in your backyard? And I seriously did that. I wanted to see one. Really bad. And I would like meditate, just trying to reach out mentally. I wanted to see one.
Yeah.
And apparently it worked. And I found out this is a thing. If you investigate UFOs, they are aware of it. The ETs are watching everything closely.
Yeah.
And I found out this out with a lot of researchers. Once they start looking into it, they'll have an encounter.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. It took a few years. It was 1992.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never forget it. Late July. And I was talking with my brother who had seen a UFO, and my sister-in-law who had seen aliens as a girl, a young kid. My other sister-in-law saw ETs too. So I had 2 sister-in-laws who had encounters. At any rate, they were helping me through all of this because I was an emotional wreck. I mean, I seriously was. And so it's July 1992. I'm like, it's getting late. I got to go to work. They lived in Woodland Hills. I lived in Canoga Park. This was in Southern California. I lived maybe 5 miles away.
Yeah.
And so I left their house. They live on this tiny little side street. And I was driving maybe 2-3 minutes and coming around this really tight hairpin corner, and only about 3 miles an hour. It's a very sharp corner on a tiny little street. So I look up through my windshield and I saw what I thought was a bird, honestly, swooping down towards my car from 300 feet up to the right. And looking up, I saw it couldn't be a bird. It was glowing white and it was round. I thought, well, this is a firecracker, because it was small, right?
Right.
And as it came and swooped down and stopped in front of my windshield, I'm like, well, that's not a firecracker. No, this was an orb. I guess you might describe it as an orb, a sphere about a golf ball size, a little larger.
All right, okay.
And really close. I mean, this was a foot in front of my windshield.
Yeah.
And it stopped and it's like looking at me. And I'm like, oh, wow, oh my God, look, holy cow. And I'm staring at this thing.
Yeah.
Back and forth in front of my windshield 2 or 3 times, stops again right in front of my face. And it's over the hood of my car at this point. And it moves forward, swoops down, almost touches the road, the cement, and goes straight up through the trees. And I remember, the last thing I remember is leaning over on the dashboard with, holding the steering wheel and looking straight up at this thing as it went straight up towards outer space.
Yeah.
And here's where, I'd always tell people, that's my sighting.
Yeah.
And someone, years later asked me, well, what happened next? I'm like, well, I don't remember. In fact, I forgot about the whole darn thing.
Oh, right.
I completely forgot about it for about 3 months, 5 months. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
but
you
quite
know,
a while.
Yeah.
So
Having
did you
seen
did you
other
have any missing
UFOs.
time from that?
Yeah, I think I did. I
Yeah,
honestly think I do. Because I've seen UFOs after that. And I
yeah,
always like write it down and I remember it and I run and tell people. I was 3 minutes away from my brother's house. I would have turned around
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
said, "Oh my God, I saw one. It's my first amazing sight." And I didn't do that. I don't
No.
remember driving home. I did not write it down. I
Yeah.
didn't remember it at all. I'm pretty sure I had missing time.
Yeah, sounds like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Maybe they used the little flashy thing on you.
The-
they must have. I've talked to enough people where they said, "Oh, I completely forgot." I'm like, "How can you forget a UFO that landed in front of your car?"
Yeah.
Seriously? Like, I don't know. And,
You
well,
just-
now I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
The thing, it's so easy to forget stuff that you've encountered, though.
Yeah, it
It
is.
just
Yeah.
needs that, but then it just needs that one little thing to re-trigger it, and then it's like, oh my! Like you just said, how could you forget something so significant as that?
Yeah, it's weird
It
because these are
doesn't make sense, does it?
no. It's something so unusual. You feel like it would be ingrained in your mind,
Yeah,
and it often is. I mean, people will tell me when I interview them, like, I think about this every darn day. I think about it when I wake up. I think about it when I go to sleep. I
Yeah.
think about
Yeah.
it several times a day. And I get that because once I remember, I'm kind of, yeah. But yeah, I completely forgot. It's weird.
yeah,
It is.
yeah. I've had a couple of them. Like when I pulled that implant out my nose. I've only never
Yeah.
told 3-4 times, but it's one of the most memorable things. But I just forget about it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
just
like
forget
you
it ever
said,
happened.
There's a trigger sometimes. I call it a
Yeah.
cue. Sometimes
Yeah.
we'll see, a light in the sky or a picture of a
Yeah.
gray or one
Yeah,
guy I
it's just-
interviewed. He was from Everett, Washington. He bit down on his molar tooth and cracked it open. And
Yeah.
boom, he remembered being abducted as a kid. And
Wow.
the ETs were working on his mouth. He remembered the
Ah,
5-hour-long abduction, actually,
Jesus.
onboard experience. So that's what I would call a cue.
Yeah.
yeah.
I just remembered spontaneously.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I've had a bunch of sightings since then. Some really
Yeah.
cool ones.
So
Yeah.
do you think they're all connected because of that first one, and then you remembered it? So the one with the orb, do you think everything else is connected to that, or do you just think like they could be random or a bit of both?
No, I think they're connected. And
Yeah.
it's taken me a long time to really come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
But at some point, I got a telepathic message from one of these UFOs once.
Right.
And when that happened, I'm like, oh my gosh, does that make me a contactee? And I didn't really want to go there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to something you don't want to take in, do you?
Yeah, but after it happens like 5 times, you're like, fine.
Okay, okay, I'll talk to you.
You can't live in denial. I mean, you got to face the evidence. You got to face the facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's
Staring you in the face.
it's because you don't know what you're dealing with, really, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It's that's I'd say the scary part. That's what it'd be for me.
Yeah.
The not knowing.
I've never felt any fear of
Have you
this.
not?
I don't know why. I know there's a lot of fear surrounding this subject. It's certainly portrayed in a very scary way in the media.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think it's really warranted, honestly. The first few years I started researching this subject, I was horrified. I'm like, what? People are being abducted against their will by bug-eyed ETs who have no compassion and they're experimenting on people.
Yeah.
And that's just not true, I don't think. It took me a long time of just stepping back, objectively looking at what actually happens to people who are taken on board. And yeah, they're physically examined, and that can be terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I asked them, well, what actually happened to you? And they're like, well, they took, the skin samples or cut their hair or healed them. That was the subject of my first book,
Yeah.
healing cases. And I started to realize, well, this isn't all that bad. In fact, it's quite good in a lot of cases. Not everyone, feels this way.
No.
I know a lot of people have a lot of fear and trauma, but most of the people that I've talked to, honestly, who have had repeated experiences over their lifetimes, at some point, it usually does start out scary, but they kind of reverse their opinions and say,
Yeah.
well, I got spiritually enlightened by this. I was healed. I would not trade this for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if the people that are being abducted, if they're compliant with the greys and they kind of like let them do what they want, because to my mind, I don't think the alien races have any kind of compassion. So I think if you're showing fear, they maybe get a bit angry.
Bit arsey with you.
Yeah, and not kind of treat you as well as they should do. Whereas if you're a bit more compliant and kind of go with what they want, they're more pleasant, and I don't know really.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Makes you wonder.
Don't know.
Yeah, well, I can say that I haven't personally, in my own research, in my own cases, I don't have any cases of where the ETs are intentionally harming someone or scaring them or hurting them or torturing or displaying any type of sadistic behavior.
Yeah.
They can at times come across as less emotion than your average person, perhaps.
Yeah.
But that's usually with these short little, what I believe are AI greys, who are probably not, fully autonomous entities as we would think of them.
Like clones.
Yeah, because the taller greys, the 5 foot tall ones.
Yeah.
People describe them as very emotional. I've had a number of people tell me they had very loving experiences with them.
Yeah.
Right.
And they are the ones. The first thing that always out of their mouths, almost without exception, is don't be afraid. Have no fear. We won't hurt you. We're not here to harm you. It's just that people get such a strong fear reaction. And then when you're in fear, it's very easy to conclude that this is a negative experience.
Yeah.
You're terrified. It's not pleasant. No one likes to be, scared out of their minds, but they're not here to hurt us. They're not here to take over. I've got zero
think
that.
Yeah, sorry. Do you not think though that they might have different agendas? Like, even though they're the same, I suppose, species, they've all got different jobs to do. So, say one group, you go and abduct these people. That group, you go and do something that I can't think off the top of my head. But even though, like I said, the same species, but they've all got different jobs. Like us as humans, we go out to work and do different things. Do you think it could be something like that? That they're told what they need to do, and each group do different things? I don't know.
I mean, this is still a new field. There's definitely room for a lot of research. There's still a lot of questions surrounding this whole field. But I feel like, for myself as a researcher, I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on their agendas, and there are multiple agendas. And what I found out matches up perfectly with what, say, John Mack uncovered, and Barbara Lamb, and Dolores Cannon, and Edith Fiore. They do have agendas. One main agenda is collecting genetic samples. Yeah. This is why they're examining people. They're basically creating hybrid offspring, hybrid babies.
Right.
I cringe when I think how skeptics must think about this. I'm like, what? Half alien, half human babies? Yes. Wow. And the fact is, they're not as alien as you might think, the Greys. They're essentially human. They've got the same genetics. This is what a number of contactees have been told, that the Greys, due to space travel and genetic manipulation to some extent, have lost the ability to reproduce. Yeah. And they're trying to reintroduce that. So that is a main agenda. Another main agenda, and I don't care if you're talking about Greys or praying mantis type ETs or humans or strange humanoids, blue beings, light beings, tall whites, they all give the same darn messages. And if you are not screaming and out of your mind, and at which point you probably will have missing time. They don't want people to be scared. And if you are freaking out, they're going to say, you know what, this person can't handle it. Let's put them back. Let's cover this up. They can remember it when they're ready. Right. But people who aren't freaking out will get conversations with them. And it's almost always along the same lines. First, they warn people about nuclear proliferation. This is a big deal. They do not like our use of nuclear materials. No. And this turns up. It's turned up since the contact era in the 1950s and is still going on. That's a main message. They're very concerned about how we're treating our environment.
Yeah.
So they will talk about, pollution, us poisoning our water supply. They're very concerned about our warlike ways.
Yeah.
That comes up about our greed and corruption. So that's an agenda, sort of like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They will take people down. This is not uncommon. They will take people down to the engine room, what we would call the engine room. And they describe how it works. They said, we operate our craft using, usually it's along the lines of electromagnetism, harnessing the gravitational fields of our planet, the magnetic lines, this sort of thing. And they say, why are you using fossil fuels? There are other sources of energy.
Yeah.
So that is a major agenda. And beyond that, they will take people up to the helm, the control room.
Yeah.
And I've got several cases of this where they sit people down in the seat and teach them how to fly.
Right.
Really?
I mean, this is not as unusual as you might think.
Wow.
And so they're very concerned, and another major agenda for sure, because I get almost without exception, contactees are profoundly psychic.
Yes.
They have a huge psychic awakening, a transformation, an enlightenment.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
So I've got case after case of people who are come back with the ability to do hands-on healing.
Yeah.
Channeling or precognition, out-of-body travel. That's huge.
Yeah.
I just found out that a bunch of contactees levitated following their encounter.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. I got a case from Jacques Vallée. He described it. It's a very famous case of a doctor in France who was healed of 2 injuries. And he says he levitated following his encounter. And I thought, well, gosh, that happened to Whitley Strieber. That happened to Stephen Greer.
Yeah.
And I started finding all these cases. In fact, in my latest book, it's called Symmetry. It's about a contactee by the name of Dolly Safran. And she's fully conscious. She has not needed regressive hypnosis. She has no fear. She's lived among the ETs for days, weeks, months at a time. It's the most extensive case I've ever researched. And she's describing all of this. And I'm like, Dolly, I don't suppose you've ever levitated. Because she didn't offer this, because most people don't. It's kind of outlandish. People don't want to say, oh, guess what?
I was floating around.
Yeah.
She's like, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, that did happen. And she described, I think it was 4 incidents. One was a little girl. She was 2 years old. She floated up into the closet. Another, she was climbing trees. She went from branch to branch. Another time, when she was 19 years old, she tripped when she was painting the house, fell down the basement stairs, and floated right down.
Wow.
So this is a major ET agenda. They really, really, really want us to wake up psychically.
Yeah.
To get the ability of telepathy. Can you imagine what would happen if humanity became telepathic?
Yeah.
Oh,
massive network.
I need abducting.
I'm telling you, this is not, the fear surrounding this subject is not warranted. It really isn't. We need to let go of our fear and understand that these guys are not here to take over. If they were here to take over, we'd be at lunch.
They'd have done it by now.
That's true.
Reckon. So do you think that they come from a different time or a different planets, different solar system? Yeah,
I've really looked into this because there are a lot of theories floating around as to what we're dealing with, right? And the most popular theory by far is the simplest one, extraterrestrials, people from other planets, people like us. And I think if you look at the totality of the evidence, all the way from photographs and moving films to landing traces, on the ground, to the onboard experiences where people are not in their rooms, they're not there in their house when they're supposed to be. They're somewhere else, presumably on board these craft. We have crash retrieval reports. Our government has, Roswell and so forth. The implant removal cases. I think the extraterrestrial explanation fits the evidence better than any other explanation. Yeah. And I find it quite frustrating when There are researchers out there like John Keel or Lauren Coleman, Jerome Clark, Jacques Vallée, a bunch of them, saying this is a phenomena, an intelligence that wears different masks. It's masquerading as ETs.
Yeah.
And it's not ETs. It's an interdimensional intelligence that's affecting our belief system. I'm like, first of all, what's the mechanism behind that? How do you explain that? And second of all, it's very anthropocentric.
Right.
It's a very us-based theory, like the whole world revolves around us. It doesn't fit the evidence. And yes, I think they are interdimensional, but who isn't? We all are interdimensional.
Right, yeah.
And as far as time travelers, well, I couldn't find any real good evidence to say that they're like us from the future or something.
Yeah.
And I looked. I mean, I scoured the databases of MUFON and NUFORC. And I have about 300-400 books on this subject. So I think the extraterrestrial, that's what we're dealing with, beings from other planets.
Yeah.
If they're not, where does that leave us? What are we? We're not in someone else's belief system, wearing masks and manifesting.
Yeah.
We are extraterrestrials to all the other people out there.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say it's vice versa as well, isn't it? What they are to us, we are to them.
Yeah.
And exactly. And this is the message most, I'm going to say almost, I won't say all, but pretty much get that same message. At some point, they will tell you, we are you, you are us. We are one.
Yeah. It's just energy, isn't it?
Yep.
It's
very interesting. That's what kept me out of the UFO field, honestly. I thought it was too Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are all humans? I mean, where are the tentacles? Come on.
Want something fancy.
Yeah.
I thought ETs would be the Blob. You remember that movie?
Oh, I watched that recently. I've never seen that, and I watched it recently.
Yeah, it was good. And that's what I was expecting. Something more completely out of our imagination. But no, they're all humanoid, almost without exception, or humanoid. So they are us, we are them.
Yep, makes sense. Right.
So, go on.
No, I was going to say jump to the questions, but if you've got a couple, then we'll.
I was just going to ask. I know that you've been involved in like paranormal investigation and stuff. What's your most, I'd say, scary experience? Either your own personal experience or something somebody's accounted to you.
I started investigating the paranormal pretty early on because people started saying, well, my house is haunted too. I'm like, wait, what? Ghosts are real? What? So I started that was more reason to be upset. But I'm like, okay, fine. And I started researching ghosts and the paranormal and near-death experiences and out of bodies and channeling. I mean, I really want to figure things out. Yeah. So some of the ghost stuff was pretty scary. I remember there was a case involving these two ladies who moved into this old retirement building not far from where I lived. This was in Van Nuys, California. And they said as soon as they moved in, there was these knocking sounds on the wall that were just going on nightly. And they thought it was the neighbor. They complained to management. And management said, well, he just moved out because he thought you were doing it. It was still going on. And from that point on, it accelerated. They had footsteps, lights going on and off, cold spots, weird odors. And this moved up to these dark apparitions, which would rush across the room. So one night they're in bed. They had a big king-size bed, and which they shared. They were poor. It was a one-bedroom apartment, and they could only afford it by sharing the rent. And so this apparition comes around the corner and they're like, do you see that? And I'm like, yeah, I see it. And it comes and rushes in and attacks one of the girls. And she couldn't move. She was pressed down into the bed. She said it moved right inside her. And basically, I mean, this is right to the level of possession. Yeah. You can see this awful looking old woman with just really creepy eyes and stringy hair and dirty and an evil grin. and she couldn't breathe. She said her chest hurt really bad, and her friend was trying to lift her off the bed and could not lift her. And so that was really scary for them. They moved out. I mean, the tiny girl, she prayed to God. She wasn't religious, but she's like, what else are you going to do? It eventually lifted.
So how long did that last? Was that hours, days?
Well, that particular incident was, just a few moments, but it was
right, okay.
The whole haunting itself escalated over a period of about 3 months.
Right. It's a long time if you live in there.
Yeah, it is.
If it's constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, another really scary case was this brother and sister who lived in the house, and she started hearing knocking noises, and her brother heard it too. And he's like, what are those knocking noises? And she said, ignore it. Just ignore it. It's not good. If you pay attention to it, it will feed off your fear.
Yeah.
And this stupid him, he's like, what are you? He starts asking it questions. And one day he's in the shower, and it was always on the roof, the knocking. He starts knocking on the shower walls. And that freaked him out. He goes running out. I'm like, oh my God. And so he's in bed one evening, and he would always hear footsteps coming up to the hall and stop. He'd whip open his door. There'd be nothing there. So one day, the footsteps come right into his room, and he wakes up, and he sees his mattress pressed down, and there's this huge black form. A black apparition. This is what I would call a demonic type spirit, poltergeist, because a lot of the ghosts are, your Aunt Linda or something.
Yeah.
But that's not what this was. I don't know. I have my own theories about, demonic spirits, but at any rate, it pressed down on him. He was paralyzed. He couldn't move, and he's not religious either, but he's called out to Jesus, and that didn't help. He called out for Buddha. I mean, he's calling out all the major religious figures he can think of.
All the deities.
And then it finally lifted up, and that was basically it. He stopped giving it the energy it needed to manifest.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think this is sort of uncontrolled psychokinetic abilities. If someone has any mediumistic ability, this sort of thing can happen. If you're not dealing with your own fears and suppressions, it can manifest as what we would perceive to be an evil spirit, when really it's us doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about this, but I think a lot of researchers have come up with that theory, and it does fit in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick question? Have you had any encounters, whether yourself or again an account from somebody else, where there's been like ghost or paranormal and UFO alien activity at the same time, or going on around the same time? Not like one's happening at the same time as the other, but around like together. If you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'd say that's almost the norm.
Right.
And in my own case, I did see an apparition of my mother after she passed away in 1984. Right. But I was a skeptic, so I thought, I'm just grieving. I am obviously hallucinating. So I kind of just dismissed it.
Yeah.
But I started investigating UFOs, and right at that exact time, I started having a lot of out-of-body experiences.
Yeah.
And I would go to these haunted places, and I would experience some activity.
Yeah.
I had my hair pulled once. Someone stuck their finger in my armpit. I'm like, what?
Nice.
I heard noises and things like this. But with other people, yes, for sure. Probably the ultimate case of that kind was this guy in Canyon Country who had a UFO land in his backyard.
Right.
Canyon Country in Southern California. It's a pretty remote area outside of LA.
Yeah.
And he just described this object. There's nothing out there in his backyard. And he says it landed. It was blue and white. It took off. And said the very next night, Bigfoot was there in the same spot.
Right.
And I cringed. I'm like, Bigfoot, oh no. Because I had avoided Bigfoot for years. I was afraid it might be real, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fine, I'm going to have to look into this. And I ended up doing a lot of Bigfoot research, writing about it as well, books, stuff. They're absolutely real.
Yeah.
But he described this Bigfoot encounter, and he says, Preston, it could read my mind. And I
Yeah.
thought, what? And he said, yeah, it knew that I was scared, and he said it was really angry at the dogs, which were barking. His dogs were going crazy.
Right.
And so he had this weird telepathic link, which turns out to be a thing. I've heard that in many Bigfoot encounters. And I'm like, okay. And he described the whole thing. He saw footprints the next day. Not great ones, but something.
Yeah. But there's something there.
And I thought that was the extent of it. And he's like, no. Following that, they had a huge poltergeist type outbreak in their house.
Right.
And it was full on with, all the apparitions and doors slamming, knocking noises, lights going on and off, the whole deal.
Yeah.
So there's something going on here that I am not entirely certain what's happening here. I think to some extent, when someone has contact, it wakes them up to this.
Yeah.
Or their bioelectric field is perhaps elevated, and it attracts spirits, and they start having paranormal activity. I mean, I'm still trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
It's absolutely connected. I've got case after case like this.
Yeah.
Once someone has encounters, they start seeing shadow people.
Yeah.
They become mediums. They start having, that ability. So they attract spirits like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's weird connections here. And
There
I
is.
know for sure the ETs will wake people up psychically. So they'll start having precognition and dreams which come true. And it's like, this is our gift to you for what you have given us. They told that to at least 3 people that I know of. Same exact words. Even.
Yeah. So, that is interesting.
It is, yeah.
Because it's like, I had a few encounters, and then the last is one place where I used to live. I used like UFOs and like apparitions and that. And the last things that started happening were the shadow people. It wasn't long after that I moved out, because it was, well, there's a number of reasons, but that was a big reason why I didn't stay there much longer.
Yeah, and it behooves all researchers not to ignore this, because a lot of them do.
Yeah.
There's some very nuts and bolts researchers out there, which I understand. They just want to prove this. They don't want to bring in all the woo-woo. But you're not going to solve any mysteries by ignoring evidence.
No.
We really have to look at the spiritual aspects of this, because that is integral to what's going on here.
Yeah.
That's one of their agendas, is to wake us up to who we really are and what we can do. We're immortal beings. We don't die.
No.
We've forgotten that, a lot of us. And that's why they wake people up to mediumship and out-of-body experiences and all this stuff that we can do.
Have you ever had an out-of-body experience?
Yes, I have. I got really good at it, actually.
Oh,
I
you could do it on demand.
Not quite. I mean, there's times.
But
I would say fairly regularly. I've had well over 1,000 of them.
Wow. I thought he was going to say like 10 or something.
No. I mean,
wow.
I became obsessed because the first time it happened, I pursued it. I read the book by Robert Monroe.
Yeah.
Right.
He's very famous in this field. He's written 3 books, and he described his experiences, and he was very sincere. It sounded real. I'm like, well, gosh, can we really do this? And he gave instructions, which are basically meditation, visualization and such. I thought, okay, this sounds kind of scary, but let's give it a try. And it took me about a month, 2 months. And immediately, once I started doing the exercises, I had really increased dream recall, pre-lucid dreams, false awakenings, until about, a month and a half in. Just one day I laid down in bed. I was kind of depressed. It was following the death of my mother and finding out UFOs were real. And I was like really struggling with all of this.
A lot going on.
And I just laid down and I felt what they call the vibratory state.
Yes.
Right.
You've heard of that?
Yeah.
The whole body vibrates like.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Monroe said, "Oh, it's like a mild electric shock." I thought I was being electrocuted. I really did. I thought I'd stuck my finger in the light socket.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm dying here. What is going on? I'm being electrocuted. And I popped right out of my body. And I flew across my bedroom across the hallway and into the bathroom. And I grabbed the counter and I looked in the mirror and there was nobody there.
Yeah.
And at that second, I knew that there is life after death. You can go out of your body, and I was doing it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm trying not to. You know, I got pulled right back in real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really buckled down on the meditation and had an identical experience the next weekend. And a couple of days after that, I woke up. I was already out of body. I thought I died. I was horrified. Well, I can't tell you how scary that was. And I really had that cold dread of, I'm dead.
Yeah.
I have done this. I died back into my body and I woke up. I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm not. I've got better.
So yeah, it got really good. It took me a year. I would pop out, be there for a few seconds. I'd be like, yeah, I did it. And whoosh, right back in. Right. Strong emotion will bring you back in.
Yeah. Yeah, so it does.
So 6 weeks, though, to learn to do it is pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, I've taught people how to do this, and some do it the very next day. Others have a real steep learning curve. I'm still trying.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
I'd be one of them. It'd take me 10 years, and I'd fall over or something.
It's doable. It really is. I think there's a lot of obstacles. You know, people think they can't do it.
Yeah.
People have a lot of fear. There's someone, you know, we're very lazy as humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't want to put in the effort, but if you put in the effort, if you meditate an hour a day, which is not easy to do, you might think it is, but you know, sitting down and doing nothing.
I can do that. It's just concentrating. Problem.
Yeah, he's having the time. He's having the time to do nothing. That's what it is.
Yeah, but if you meditate, I mean, that's what I did. I was so excited. It was like discovering a whole new world.
Yeah.
And I eventually got really good at it.
Isn't it?
Oh, it was so much
to have that ability. But did it not, when you looked in the mirror and didn't see yourself, I think that'd have freaked me out more than anything.
Yeah, it would me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have probably, passed out if you could. I don't know.
It's called the desire body, the astral body. So when you pop out, all your emotions come in full force. And for most people, that's fear or excitement. And I did have fear once, but the excitement was so overwhelming that it blocked me from doing it. But I got over it.
When you do that, when you go out of body, could you then go astral traveling?
Yes. It took me a while. First few times I'm flapping my arms in the middle of the room. I'm like, how do I do that? And I started reading all the books and like, willpower, just will yourself.
Yeah.
And bit by bit, I was able to stay out, 10 seconds, and then a minute, and then 2 minutes, and then an hour.
Yeah.
It took, like I said, a couple of years. But then you walk through walls, and I first started by exploring the house. It is scary because you're like, wow, this is different.
Yeah.
You can walk through walls, and people don't see you. You run up to them, and they don't see you. You're a ghost.
Yeah.
But then I would go up, float around the house, start exploring the neighborhood, going to neighbors and friends' houses and family, and eventually farther to the other side.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't get there until my mom took me. She appeared one day. I'm like, I would call for her. I'd be like, Mom, 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 Mom. Whenever I got out of, that's why I wanted to do it. I wanted to find out if there was life after death.
Right, okay.
And she appeared and she took me to what I guess you would call the heavenly realms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would not describe myself as religious, but that works for me. The heavenly realms. I mean, it is beautiful. It is absolutely the most gorgeous nature. It's very much nature.
Yeah.
Forests, fields, and gardens and streams.
Wow.
Yeah. So would you see other people astral traveling while you're doing it? Or would you see other... Well, it's not people, is it? I suppose it's the soul, isn't it? The spirit.
Yeah.
The inner self.
There are people... My mom, she looked much younger. She died at 49, very young.
Yeah.
Quite tragic. But she looked like 25.
Yeah.
Right.
And me, by the time I got really good at it, I was about that age and really starting to lose my hair. But it all comes back.
Yeah.
And, I look great. I mean, you should see me on the other side. Man, oh man. I've seen, there's people there for sure.
Yeah.
Anytime, a loved one passes away.
And you can communicate with them. No, not a problem, as long as you know how to do it.
Yeah, just recently, tragically, my nephew passed away
Oh,
due to complications from alcoholism and other things.
right. Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm going to see him, because I've seen my dad, I've seen my mom, I've seen my friend, I've seen all these people who've passed on. And usually it takes a week or two or a month, or with my dad, it took years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that night, the very night my nephew died, April 20th, just this year, actually, I was pulled into the tunnel of near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And I was pulling myself in that tunnel. I'm like, oh my gosh, here it is. It's happening. Every time I go out of body, I'm like, wow.
There we go.
This is amazing. Look at this. If my friends could see me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just wild. And I'm
So
like, okay.
do you know where you're going when you do this? Do you have a plan, a route, or is it just random?
Generally speaking, if you have a plan, it works so much better. You set your intention, like, I want to see a past life. I want to go to the Akashic Library. I want to meet an enlightened master. Oh, that's so much fun. I want to, visit the garden place that have, what I would call the heavenly realms.
Yeah.
But this time, I wanted to see him, and I was taken right into down this tunnel. There was a light at the end, and I went through it. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And it was into a big room. I'm like, wow, look at all these people. They were all newly deceased. I just knew it. You get a lot of impressions. It's all very telepathic when you're out of body.
Yeah.
Right.
All your, walls are broken down.
Yeah.
And I looked, there was a greeter at the door, a lady at a desk.
Here to help.
I'm like, hey, I'm looking, my name's Preston, and I'm looking for my nephew. His name is James Dennett.
Yeah.
And she smiled. She's a very nice lady with dark hair. She looks normal. Everyone, they look very much normal, but bright, very bright-eyed and very glowy. Yeah. And she smiled at me, and she says, turn around. He's right behind you. And I turned around, and there was my nephew.
Wow.
I forgot he was 6'2". I hadn't seen him in a while. I'm like, whoa. He looked great. I mean, he was radiating light, and he's smiling ear to ear. And I'm like, I love you. He grabs my hands. He says, I love you too. And I'm like, how are you? How are you? He says, I'm actually really good. I'm doing really well. And he says, Preston, I watched your YouTube video. Because I have a YouTube channel where I put out my research. He says, you're doing really important work. You've got to keep that up. I really love that you just did. And I'm like, that was so emotionally overwhelming.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks, James. I wanted to talk about him, what he was experiencing.
Yeah.
But he was more concerned about me and my grief. So
yeah.
Really
cool. Say, does it make it easy? Has that made it easier for you to cope with your grief of losing him?
Oh, yeah. 100%. And mind you, it's still very hard when you lose someone.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I can't cry in the same way. Like when my mom died, I could not get over it.
No.
Oh my God, we're all going to die. Why didn't we talk about this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No one ever discusses that we're, going to die at some point.
And you don't think it happens. You don't think it's going to happen until it actually happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but once I saw her, I'm like, wow. And then after that, when you start to have lots of precognition and warnings and all kinds of stuff. So it definitely makes it easier. We are absolutely going to have a wonderful time.
Yeah.
I'm in no rush to get there, but I know how great it is. So I am like, wow, this is, I cannot encourage people enough to try this because it will change your life.
Yeah.
Really
I'm gonna write a list, get it ready for when I go. I am, honestly.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. I suppose it's really like you said, it's really overwhelming. Like the first time you ever went.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My family thought I was crazy. So I've been like, UFOs are real, you guys. And Mark, of course, believed me, but I have 5 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And my dad, and he thought, I was crazy. He was like, stop talking about this.
Yeah.
My brother Jamie and Steven, my sisters were kind of okay with it. They believed in UFOs for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, guess what, guys? I'm going out of body. Oh, no.
He's off again.
Started another one.
I'm like, no, for real.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
and I eventually taught Mark how to do it.
Yeah.
And I taught my friend how to do it. I taught classes on this.
Yeah.
That's
right.
doable. It's not hard.
Excellent.
It's just, you got to really buckle down and do it.
Yeah.
It's the dedication, isn't it? You've got to dedicate yourself to trying to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I know what I'm doing next week.
Yeah.
I've got another week off work, so
There you go. You'll be a master by next Friday.
if you don't see me again, I'm messed up somewhere and I don't know where I am.
All right, I'll call Preston in to get you back.
Yeah.
It's very cool. I mean, the stuff you can do. I had, I moved into a new house at one point and the light kept going on and off.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody died in the house, right? Before I moved in, I thought, gosh, what is going on here? And after it happened 5 times, and then I walked in and the fan was on too. And you can't turn this stuff on I'm like, okay, there's someone in my house. And then I was talking to a contactee and she's like, I sense a ghost in your house. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I think it's a guy. There's two of them. And I called up another lady who I know is a medium.
Yeah.
She's like, oh yeah, you have got spirits in your house.
Oh.
So I'm like, one day I found myself out of body and I remembered, I'm like, okay, let's look and see if I can find somebody in my house. And I started searching the rooms and I'm wandering around and I walked into the bathroom and I saw someone behind me in the mirror. I whirled around and there was this guy and he was, 5'9" or so, a little shorter than me. Kind of a stocky guy with brown hair, round face.
Yeah.
Nice guy. And I'm like, hey, what's your name? And he says, my name is Mac.
Yeah.
So I grabbed his arm and it felt physical. When you're on the same vibration as someone else.
Yeah.
It feels normal. And I said, Mac, you don't belong here. You really need to go to the other side. There's a better place for you. You really shouldn't be in my house. And I walked him out the door.
Really?
See you later.
Yeah.
Cleared my house.
Don't come back.
And it was funny because several weeks later I was flying around and I'm like, let's go to the other side. And I went whoosh. And you hit this barrier. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like diving into water kind of.
Right, yeah.
Right.
But it's a higher vibration.
Yeah.
It's different. And I popped out in this huge kind of mall-like setting. It was very nice, like an expensive hotel. It was really beautiful, actually, with marble floors and fountains and stuff. And I'm walking around and I see this kid and he catches my eye. And for some reason, I walk right up to him. And he says, hi, I'm Mac, and I love you. I'm like,
all right.
I love you too. It was the same darn guy. So I, kicked out of my. I felt bad afterwards. I'm like, I kicked him out of my house.
Yeah, it's a lovely bloke.
But yeah, he was up in the heavenly realms.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Wow. It's amazing.
It is.
I do need to do something like this.
Yeah, I know.
I am so jealous now that you do all this and I do nothing.
Andy does nothing.
Hey, we all do it every night.
Froze,
The
Deborah.
trick is remembering it, honestly.
Yeah.
So just keep a dream journal. If you're having flying dreams, you're getting close. It's just really all about remembering it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we all do it. These are not supernatural, superhuman abilities. This is how we're supposed to be living our lives. It's just our own governments. I'm mad at them for covering up the UFO subject and dumbing us down and creating. They don't have our best interests in mind. They just don't. They're filling us with these prescription drugs for just about everything you can imagine. Really trying to stop us from waking up psychically.
Dumbing us down.
For sure. So that's a real battle going on. The unequal distribution of wealth, the divisiveness. And they know who they are. The banking industry, the insurance industry, the oil industry, the pharmaceutical industry. Shame on them. They are on my naughty list.
Yes. In your little red book.
They should not be covering up the UFO technology that would allow us to live with free energy and move
Yeah, I
away
know.
from oil and clean up our planet and do all the right things.
Yeah, that's true. Right, we're going to head to a break because we're now on the hour has gone so quick. So we're going to have a quick break, 4-minute break, and then we shall be back with it. So we've got some questions. So if I can find the break, there we go. Right, we'll see you all in 4 minutes.
eight, seven, six, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello. Oh,
I muted myself, sorry.
it's all right. I think you ended the video before.
No, I didn't touch it.
Oh, it got to 6 and then went off.
All right, no, it went to the end here.
Amateurs.
I know.
It's
Right,
all
the
right.
staff. Right.
Do you want to do the first one? We'll do the questions now, Preston. Is that okay with you? What the viewers have wrote in? Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Right. First question's from Nickname. What brought you into this field and what is your most profound account? Thank you. Well, I sort of asked that at the beginning, didn't I? But
Yeah. Part.
Yeah, I would say it was a sighting on the news over Alaska. It's a very well-known case, 1986. Captain Kenju Torochi saw a UFO. He's a Japanese commercial airliner. That's what brought me into this field. That and finding out that, I knew a lot of people were having encounters. And the most profound account, that's really hard for me to answer.
Yeah.
In terms of one I've investigated, there was one case which I found really interesting involving a Navy medic by the name of Kevin Kamen.
Right.
It was just an amazing, profound encounter where his bunkmate on this Navy ship said one day, "Hey, guess what? I'm a contactee," and told, the guy interviewed, Kevin, that he'd been having encounters since he was a little boy. He'd been on their ships. They take him all the time, not only on their ships, but to other planets, their home planet, and all this. And Kevin's like, "Yeah, right.
yeah,
True. I'd like to meet your little green friends." And his friend, who I call Lewis, he doesn't want his real name used,
Yeah.
said, "Okay, I will ask them." And comes in like a week later and says, "Okay, I asked them." And they said, "Okay. And by the way, they took me to your house." And he described Kevin's house in detail.
Wow.
Only it was from the 70s. So they went back in time.
yeah,
He described
Right.
Kevin's house, the shag carpet, the milk stain on the Camaro,
yeah.
and all this stuff. So Kevin's like, "Geez, this guy must be CIA or something. This is impossible."
Yeah.
And a week goes by, and Lewis comes in and says, "Okay, they're here. Go up on deck. They're ready to meet you." This is a Navy ship with hundreds of officers on it. It's 600 feet long. And this was high noon. And so Kevin's on his lunch hour. He goes up on the deck, and there's this gigantic sort of diamond-shaped craft.
Yeah.
Flashing all these colored lights. It was really beautiful. It was much larger than the ship. And all these people on deck were completely ignoring it.
Yeah.
And so he does what everyone should do, is get another witness, and runs up to the cook, the mess cook, starts shaking him. And the guy will not pay attention to him. He cannot get anyone's attention. The next thing Kevin knows is he sees the ship receding, the Navy ship, and he's up inside this thing, looking down through the side of it. And it's a long story, but they started talking to him. He didn't want to turn around because he was really scared. But they just said, he's like, "Where are you from?" And they showed him a star chart. He's like, "Are you going to eat me?" And they said, "No. We watch too many horror movies. We eat fish. We eat vegetables." And they started telling him all this stuff. Like, we speak all the languages of Earth. There's been some exchange of technology, various things. He asked about Roswell. They said, "Yes, that's real. They are in touch with the major governments." And he finally says, like, "What do you look like?" I'm shortening it, right? Because it's I could tell the whole show with this one encounter. But he's like, "What do you look like?" And they said, "Well, we're not little and we're not green." And sometimes our appearance frightens people.
Yeah.
So he gathered his courage and turned around. And he said that there were 3 of them, and they were praying mantis type, and they were 15 feet tall.
Jesus.
Yeah. I'm like, "Kevin, 15? He says, "Listen," one of them walked right up to me. I'm 6 feet tall. It was more than twice my height.
Oh.
So it was like looking up at a basketball hoop type thing. And it reached down or looked down at him. He says its eyes were as big as basketballs. It was bone white, just oozing intelligence, and said, "Would you like to go to our planet?" And he said, "No, take me home."
What? How long have we got? Of course I want to go.
Yeah, but I asked him about that. He says, "Listen, you don't understand. It's scary."
Yeah.
He says he almost crapped his pants. He didn't use those words. But he says, "I felt like a bug to them, just a tiny little thing." And he didn't want to end up an experiment, in some
Yes.
test tube or something. I'm
Yeah, I
like, did
suppose
they
it-
ever hurt you? And he's like, no, they didn't hurt me. But
Yeah, but I suppose if you're there with something that's 15 foot up,
Yeah, you're in that situation.
you don't
It's
know
going to be
whether they're just
scary, isn't it?
appeasing you to get you where they want you to be.
yeah. And it's a praying mantis. I mean, that's, you know,
Yeah,
it's not like your normal Nordic, friendly human-looking ET.
Yeah.
But it was totally friendly. I mean, he didn't even get physically examined that he
No.
recalls.
Yeah.
But it reached down and grabbed his shoulder, and he screamed. And the next thing he knows, he's back in his bunk on the ship, covered in sweat. And his friend whips the curtain open around his bed and says, "So," he's grinning from ear to ear, "how did you like your little ride?" He didn't. He was upset.
yeah.
That's one of the more profound cases, but there's a lot of them.
That's pretty mind-blowing, though, isn't it?
Yeah. One lady contacted me after I put that out in the book. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I was jogging down the street outside of her home in O'Fallon, Illinois."
Yeah.
This is 2006, if I'm correct. Yeah. And she jogs at like 4:30 a.m. I'm like, "How do you do that?" She's like, "I just do it every day."
Yeah.
So she's out there jogging with her dog outside her home in O'Fallon. It's rural. And her dog stops and looks up ahead at this T intersection of Kyle Road and I forget the other street, but it's a T intersection. And she sees this figure walking down the road. I mean, it's booking it. It's moving fast. And her first thought was it was a man on stilts.
Right.
Except it wasn't, because its arms were far too long. It was really skinny, had this giant head, and it walks under the street light or next to the street light. And it was about as tall as the street light. And it was a praying mantis walking down the center of Kyle Road in O'Fallon, Illinois.
Yeah.
And it didn't see her. It was looking at the ground as if searching for something, looking back and forth. And its arms were going up.
Yeah.
And it's making 10-foot strides or 7-foot strides. And she says, "Preston, this thing was 15 feet tall." And I know it was 15 feet tall, she said, because it went right up to the top of the streetlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and she measured it. She went up there and looked at the streetlight. She's like, "Oh my gosh." And she watched it just walk down the street, and God bless her, she took off after it.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would have the courage
Mad.
for that, but she did. And she ran up to the intersection and saw it disappearing into the darkness, and it went off into the cornfields. And I'm like, "Was there anything out there? Why do you think it was there?" She's like, "I have no idea. There's a school, there's cornfields. There's really nothing out there." But she said, "I do live right next to Scott Air Force Base. It's 6 miles away." I thought, ooh, Scott. There was a huge UFO encounter there in the year 2000.
Right.
They've been implicated with this UFO subject in a number of cases. So there might be a connection there. I think probably there is.
Yeah.
But further questioning revealed she was, in fact, a contactee.
Right.
So that might be a factor here, too.
Yeah.
I don't know. But she says it didn't see me. I'm like, okay. Yeah, it was an amazing encounter.
That is amazing.
The praying
Makes
mantis
you
one's
wonder
so crazy.
Makes you wonder why they look like that, but then again, I suppose it's a different species of ET more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah. Isn't that weird? Like, why praying mantis? Why not ladybug?
Yeah, or a bee.
Right? But the praying mantis are one of the common types, for sure.
Yeah,
And
I've
they're, all,
heard a lot about them.
they're all basically humanoid.
Yeah.
And the further you dig into this, you start to see that there are cases of cat-like ETs. I've had several cases. Dolly Saffron described seeing cat-like ETs and dog-like ETs.
Dolly's just come into the chat now.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I love her. She's so amazing. I mean, I can't tell you how she really answered all the questions I had about this subject, because so many people are fear-based.
Yeah.
So many people recall bits and pieces. But she described how she learned how to fly the craft.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. The book Symmetry, it hit #1 on Amazon. I'm like, wow. It really describes a lot of the questions I think people have about what's going on, the ET agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She says they're absolutely friendly. They're not here to hurt us at all. That is a lie. And I believe her. I'd already come to that conclusion years earlier, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's amazing.
I've never heard of the cat type ones though. I'd be interested in those.
Yeah, I had a lady from the Midwest describe this. She said, I'm like, it had fur? And she's like, yes, it had fur over its body. Ears? I'm like, she said, yes, it had ears. And its name was Mira. I forget what she called it. It gave a name.
Right.
And it talked to her for a long time. And I've had a few other cases. And I asked Dolly, I'm like, I don't suppose, you've ever seen cat-like ETs. She's like, well, yeah, they showed them to me once.
Yeah?
Yeah.
She saw them once. Dog-like ETs as well. Short little blue beings.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law saw these short little blue beings.
Right.
Right.
My sister-in-law is an artist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so she drew them. And they looked like little troll-like beings, kind of.
Right.
Wow.
Whitley Strieber's movie, Communion.
Yes.
Oh,
had
yeah,
an image that was very similar to what she drew.
Right.
So at any rate, when I'm interviewing people and they describe, well, I saw these short little boxy troll-like beings, I'm like, hold on, can I show you a picture?
Yeah.
And I show it to them and they're like, oh my God. I showed it to Dolly and she's like, wow, that's pretty much exactly what they look like.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's another type. There's so many types. There's variations of grays. There's the short little AI. There's tall grays. There's mid-sized grays, and they have the same variations we have here among humans. I mean, just look at us. We've got little pygmy people, and very tall Watusis, and every skin color you can imagine. We're fat. We're skinny. We're got all kinds of variations, and they have the same variations.
Yeah,
So,
you don't think of it like that though.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion. People are saying, no, this is grays, and this is another type of grays, and this is another type. Well, we're all essentially have genetics that dial out a little differently.
Yeah.
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 So we all look different. But yeah, some are.
Yep.
I mean, the praying mantis are clearly different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I suspect they still have genetics.
Yeah.
Like we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Right,
you.
next question.
Yep.
Andrew.
Is from nickname. What is Preston's view on Roswell and Area 51-S4?
Yeah, both real. Roswell does exist, and so does Area 51. Roswell is the grandfather of all UFO cases. It's not going to go away.
Yeah.
There are about 100 books. I'm not exaggerating. 100 books. I ended up buying about 10 of them.
Yeah.
But at some point, I'm like, okay. But it cannot be dismissed as a mogul balloon. The Air Force wrote a book on it. It said it's a balloon, and those were crash dummies. Except the problem is those weren't used until 1954. So hello, the reports of bodies cannot be explained as crash test dummies.
No.
From weather balloons. Jesse Marcel and Frankie Rowe and Don Dwyer and all these original witnesses are just the tip of the iceberg. Walter Haut. There are hundreds of witnesses. We have tracked this case from the people who saw this thing coming down out of the sky, hitting the ground, the radar operators, the people who guarded the wreckage, the people who picked the wreckage up, the people who flew the wreckage, the people who analyzed the wreckage. All of these people have been analyzed. It is a 100% real case of a UFO crash retrieval. And it's one of hundreds. There's the Aztec case, which happened around the same time. There was a bunch. Time. There's the Aurora Paradise Valley case, Kingman UFO crash. There's one in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. It's all across the world. Yeah. This is a real phenomena, and our governments, our secret governments rather, are covering this up. Roswell is real. And Area 51 is also real. This was founded many years ago to develop highly confidential aircraft. And this is one of many places across our planet where we reverse engineer these craft, among other things. I mean, genetic experimentation with biological warfare. These are the sort of things going on at Area 51. Area 51 was first sort of outed by Bob Lazar in the late 1980s. But I've talked to people who've, are what I would call whistleblowers.
Yeah.
And so has, Linda Moulton Howe and Bill Hamilton and George Knapp. It's not just Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar, I'm absolutely convinced, is telling the truth.
Yeah.
Not only because what he says matches up with what contactees are telling, but I interviewed this one guy, Don Anderson from Utah, who was taken on board a craft. And he described it all in detail. He's, like Dolly, is very much an awake contactee.
Yeah.
And he said, boy, when I saw those drawings from Bob Lazar, I knew he was for real because it was exactly what I saw. So yeah, Area 51 is real. And there's other places like it. Rendlesham, I know, has stuff going on.
Yeah.
And Edwards Air Force Base, Norton Air Force Base, a lot of them. I would say we're neck deep. Our military is far more deeply involved in this than people realize. The highest levels of the military is who is covering this up, the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, definitely real.
Cool. Thank
Excellent.
you. Right. Next question.
Another one from Nick. Sorry, another one from Nick.
No. Right.
So, does Preston have a top UK case?
I've interviewed a number of people. Probably the most interesting for me was a guy I call Gary. He doesn't want his name used, but he lived in Cumbria. And as a little kid, he was on vacation with his family, and they had a UFO follow them home. And following that, he had these grays, what we think of as grays, appear in his bedroom. Scared the living daylights out of him. He tried to tell his parents. Unfortunately, he lived in an abusive household, and they were not receptive. So he had a very difficult childhood in that regard. And it slowed down as he became a young man, but at age 19, it flared up again. He started finding himself on board a UFO. He has not had a good time with this. He's found it to be quite traumatic.
Right.
He's described many, many onboard encounters. One time he found himself in a tank of liquid where he was able to breathe it.
I've heard that before.
Right.
Yeah, it was UFO researchers call it the breathing pool.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never really, people speculate what it's for. Some say it's for travel or things like this. I asked Dolly about it, and she's like, oh, they use that for healing sometimes.
Right.
So that could be what was going on, but he found it quite frightening. One time he's being taken home, and he wakes up and finds himself on board this little tiny craft, zooming across the landscape, and there are two grays sitting in front of him.
Yeah.
And he's just watching the view through the view screen as they're going over the landscape. And finally he says, all right, lads, really loud. And one of the grays jumps up and starts running around in circles in a complete panic. And he says, don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. It was a really tables turned situation. And the other gray turns around and says, you're going to stay there? You're not going to do anything? And Gary's like, yeah, you're fine. Don't worry. I'm not going to do anything. And the gray said, well, we've never had anyone wake up like this before.
All right.
Gary says, can you let me remember this? And they said, no, we're not allowed. And he said, why are you doing this? And they said, we're not allowed to tell you. And he didn't remember at first, but later that day he did remember, and he feels like it was a gift from them for not overreacting. Right. But he's been taken on board many times. Once they asked him, so how's your life going? How are things going? What can we do? Basically giving him a consultation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check it up on him.
So yeah, his case is still ongoing. He's had a number of encounters where he's fully conscious. They don't seem to be able to block out his memory anymore.
No.
Right.
But yeah, he's had a lot of missing time initially, but at some point, no.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I wrote about his case in my book, Onboard UFO Encounters. That's the last case because it's so extensive.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be my next read. I've got a list of reading material from all our guests now. I'm working my way through them gradually.
100 years, you'll be done.
Yeah, will you?
Yeah, next question's from Rick. I'm guessing this is regarding what you were talking about earlier. Does Preston believe the location was the draw or the people?
The people. I think for the most part, that's why they're here. You know, there are UFO hotspots. There's no doubt that, like across the U.S., you can point to certain areas, certainly. And that's true for, throughout the world, for that matter.
Yeah.
But I know here in the U.S., upstate New York is a hot spot. Sedona, Arizona, the Santa Monica Mountain Range here in California. In Colorado, it's the San Luis Valley. So I'm speculating that there's something to this.
Right.
I've got a couple of theories. One is that perhaps there are bases in these areas where they are operating underground or underwater. Or, and I think this is probably what's truly going on here, these are areas where the magnetic fields of our planet are more stable and allow them to come down.
Yeah.
And I asked Dolly about that, and that's the theory she offered.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what's going on here. But I think some of these, I think there probably are a few bases here and there, because that keeps coming up. But, so sometimes, it can be the location. But all in all, they're here for, they contact far more people than I think the public realizes.
Yeah.
I heard a quote from J. Allen Hynek. You heard of him? He's a Project Blue Book astronomical consultant.
Yeah.
And he ended up writing his own book saying, Blue Book was a farce. They were a whitewash. They were ignoring the best cases. And he said, according to William Steinman, that 1 in 40 people have been taken on board.
Wow.
And I heard that early on. I'm like, well, 1 in 40? No. That means I know someone who's been taken on board.
Yeah.
And that's what got me to ask everybody. And I found about 5 people in my circle of family, friends, and coworkers. So they are contacting an enormous number of people. And Gary from England, he went on board once he saw a warehouse filled with people. He says, Preston, I think everyone on this planet is being taken. Some just don't have the good luck or the bad luck, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
And I asked Dolly about that. And she said, pretty much on some level, everyone is known by them.
Yeah.
Some are contactees. And we know this as UFO researchers. They follow genetic lines.
Yes.
So there are people with strong genetic lines that go way back and are very important to the ETs because it provides the best of human genetics. These are people who are very psychic.
Yeah.
People who are, as a rule, helpers.
Yes.
Movers and shakers in society. So I started looking at them like, who's being taken and why? Because it's evenly divided between men and women. There was a big to-do about blood type, and that didn't really pan out, not in my research. It's not just Rh negative.
No.
That does turn up, but what I found was it's evenly divided between men and women. It's all over the world. It's not race or religion or blood type or ancestry or anything. What I found is it follows families. So if you're 50% people who have at least, probably 100%.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize it, but you're being taken, so are your parents or aunts or uncles or someone.
Yeah.
Your children. And another pattern I noticed was people, like I said, who are doing good work for humanity.
Yeah.
I was interviewing this lady in Norway, and I'm like, what do you do for a living? She says, well, actually, I'm an animal and human rights activist. Please don't use my name. I'm pretty well known.
Yeah.
And that rang a bell for me because I'm like, oh, wait, Betty and Barney Hill. Barney Hill was a social worker.
Yeah.
And, John Hunter Gray. And Michael Carter, he was awarded by President Clinton for his fight against racism. I started going through my list. I'm like, okay, it's social workers, it's environmentalists, it's doctors, it's teachers, it's writers, it's artists, it's musicians.
Anybody who helps.
Yeah, they love musicians. John Lennon, Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, the Moody Blues. I mean, you name it, Sting.
Yeah.
They love musicians.
Wow.
So, yeah, the people they're mostly here for. They're trying to wake us up. So they're contacting those who are helping others.
Yeah.
As Dolly says there, everyone here is known to the Greys.
Yes, it's really interesting because Dolly wrote to me. She was looking for someone to, tell her story.
Yeah.
And she's in heavy duty contact with the ETs. I mean, she talks to them. She's in mental contact. She's like, I'm not finding anybody. Most of these guys are liars. Most of these guys don't tell the truth. They've got their own agenda.
Yeah.
And they told her, there's a guy we want you to look up. His name is Preston Dennett, spelled with a D.
Yeah.
When she told me that, I'm like, wait, what?
You knew me?
They know about me? And it was not long after that, I had a guy call me from England, actually. And he says, are you Preston Dennett, the UFO researcher? And I'm like, yes. He says, well, I had an encounter. The Greys came and they gave me these messages. And I want to know if you've ever heard of this. I'm like, well, what did they tell you? He said that we're dealing with environmental collapse. They warned me against nuclear proliferation, our warlike ways, the same messages I was telling you. They went down the line with. He's like, have you ever heard of this? I said, well, yeah, I sure have. And we just had a nice long conversation. A lot of the people who call me just need some counseling. They just want some answers.
Yeah.
I don't have the opportunity to interview a lot of these people formally. So it's always a treat when someone agrees to that. But mostly, I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
And at the end of the conversation, he's like, well, I want to tell you one more thing. This encounter happened this morning. And the Greys said to me, this is him talking, they said to me, we want you to call Preston Dennett.
Yeah.
And he's from England. He doesn't know me. I don't know him.
Yeah.
Oh, man. When he told me, like, here we go again. They must know me. Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It is cool. You're right. Right, we've got a question from Ancient Ruby. How long has Preston been a researcher and what made him?
I've been researching for 35 years, since 1986.
Yeah.
And didn't want to do it. I resisted this field. I was so upset. And like I mentioned earlier, when you find out that your brother had seen a UFO, and I think he was taken on board because he has a little implant in his arm.
Really?
He does.
Wow.
My sister-in-law found it first. She was just kind of palpating his arm. She's like, what's this, Mark? It's right under the skin. It's like a matchstick underneath his arm.
Oh.
And I took him to the doctor, who's also a UFO researcher. And the doctor went, whoa!
Don't tell me they tried to get it out and it moved. I've heard of that before.
So, yeah, that, finding out my other sister-in-law had seen Greys, finding out I had a good friend, also named Mark, who had missing time. Another friend, Sylvia Walters, she's a pilot, a flight instructor, and a scuba driver. A good witness.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I saw one. It came right over my house. My friend was with me. I'm like, wait, I thought people who saw UFOs were alone, uneducated, out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Just not true.
Slightly mad.
Stupid. I know, my apologies, but that's what I thought. You were on drugs.
What have you been smoking?
Exactly. I thought it was swamp gas. I really did.
Yeah.
I bought into the Air Force lie. Air Force has spent an enormous amount of money, time, and effort to make everyone think that all UFOs are three things: hoaxes, hallucinations, or misperceptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I found out that my own family was seeing this, that made me a UFO researcher. I can't let this go. I'm just not going. I'm ready to, do this until the world accepts this as 100% real.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for that answer.
Yeah. Sorry I missed all that.
It's all right. Ancient Ruby wants to know, have you ever worked for the military at all?
God, no. I don't trust them at all.
No.
There's a lot of people who work for the military. And I will say my grandfather, who I never met, was in the military. And I do have a couple of family members, but generally speaking, no direct family members. I have never worked for the military. I don't trust them. They lie about this subject. They lie about everything.
Yep.
I've got really good reasons for not trusting them beyond just UFOs.
Yeah.
I will say that I have
Yeah.
interviewed some people, like the Navy medic was one.
Yeah.
I interviewed a guy who was a navigator for a submarine. He had a really cool encounter. I interviewed a civilian who was a subcontractor for the military. He had a really cool story. I interviewed Mel Hansen, who was a military officer and was part of the Malmstrom incident. Have you heard of that? 1967, Malmstrom Air Force Base, where UFOs hovered over our nuclear missile sites and shut them down.
Oh, yes.
Yes, about 20 of them.
Over the silos.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
intercontinental ballistic nuclear-tipped missiles shut them down. He was there. Yeah. Boy, what a treat it was to interview him. Robert Salas, Captain Robert Salas, was the whistleblower on that.
Yeah.
And he's since located, a half dozen other witnesses. And the guy I interviewed, Mel Hansen, saw it on TV on Unsolved Mysteries. He's like, oh, I guess I can talk now, because he had signed an NDA.
Yeah.
But he was very old, and he's like, you know what, I want to do my part for disclosure. And he said he was out there at one of the silos and saw this UFO show up. It was dark as night. I mean, all they could see was a shadow, and it shut down the missile that they were doing maintenance on. And the site immediately went back online with the failsafe of a diesel generator. And that shut down moments later. And then the second failsafe went back online with battery power. And that shut down. So 2 failsafes failed. And by this point, the military showed up, the security guys in their Jeeps, because all these sites are really widely separated.
Yeah.
It takes them an hour to drive out there, or 40 minutes or whatever. And they showed up finally. They're like, don't talk, just go in, you'll be debriefed. And he was debriefed the next morning and told in no uncertain terms, you are never to discuss this with anyone, your wife, your friends, your coworkers, nobody. And he obeyed that, except he admitted he occasionally did talk about it with one of the other witnesses who was a good friend.
Which you would if you've both seen the same thing. That's your link, isn't it? You're not betraying anybody. You've both seen the same thing. It's not like telling somebody that wasn't there. So you would do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he never got any repercussions. I think a lot of the whistleblowers are safe, because if they are, attacked by the government or reprimanded, it's an admission of truth, that there is truth to this. So we're seeing an enormous amount of whistleblowers come forward, but it's just the tip of the iceberg, because most of them have not.
Yeah.
And some people people have died over this subject. Roswell had suspicious deaths linked to it.
Oh, yeah.
Leonard Stringfield is the crash retrieval researcher.
Right.
He had a number of witnesses lose their lives after going public with him.
Wow.
So this is no joke. They are ruthless. These naughty people.
Yeah, they are.
Have unlimited budgets and will go to extraordinary lengths and are just downright evil. I mean, seriously. It's absolutely underhanded and wrong and unethical and frankly illegal what they're doing.
Yeah, it is. Suppression of information.
Yeah, they have no right.
No. Right, Nickname's asking, will Preston ever get regressed?
I've certainly thought about it. I have shied away from hypnosis for a couple of reasons. I do believe it works, and I think this has been proven. And the police have used it to recall the license plate from a witness who witnessed the Chowchilla kidnapping.
Yes.
He could not remember it, and under hypnosis he did.
Yeah.
But there are cases of child abuse, and where hypnosis is proven to be false.
Yeah.
Right.
False memories can be involved with this.
Yes, they can.
So, and under the right hands, I think it's absolutely a valid tool. There was a show called Mythbusters.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And they did it, and they proved it worked. It was really cool. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to watch this show. They staged an incident and then asked everyone to write down what they remembered. And Then they put everyone under regressive hypnosis, and they recalled in great detail, accurately, what the witness looked like, down to tattoos and color of clothing and so forth.
Yeah.
Wow.
It absolutely works. However, due to the controversies surrounding it,
Yeah.
I have stayed away from it. So I can say the cases in my book don't involve hypnosis. So shut up if you're saying this can be explained by false memory syndrome. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's basically the main reason I've stayed away from it. And I think that there are other methods. You can recall this through dreams, through dream work. That's how Betty Hill did it. Before she went into hypnosis, she dreamt it. She wrote down her dreams, and if you read the book by John Fuller, her dreams have more detail than hypnotic regressions.
Yeah.
Because that's what led. Yeah, because that's what led to it, wasn't it? With the dreams, because she was having the dreams, and each time she had a dream, there's more and more detail and more memory from it.
So what I tell people is, yes, pursue hypnosis, but only if you are having crippling anxieties.
Yeah.
Only if you have a clear-cut case of missing time. Only if you are really want to know, and be aware that this opens up a can of worms in a couple of cases, because you might remember a lot more than you're expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not all of it good.
Yeah. And one guy told me, he's like, well, yeah, I went under hypnosis, and what I got was a hypnotically retrieved memory.
Yeah.
It's different from if you remember it naturally. So, I mean, it works and it's effective. They've used it for war trauma victims, for victims of sexual abuse, very effectively.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
If someone wants to do it, I have considered it. I really seriously have. I'm still thinking about it, but I want to remember naturally. I want my cue, my trigger. I want it all to just flood into my head.
Yeah. Just remember the good bits.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
any bad bits.
The trauma often comes up first. That's the way the human mind works. We want to look at the trauma first, and people remember under hypnosis, and it's scary. They're like, I don't like this, and they're missing all the good parts.
Yeah,
right.
Because there are good parts, and if you don't have a strong fear reaction, you will remember. In my case, I think according to Dolly, it's us who's doing it, and this is a number of contactees. We make the choice not to remember, and the ETs will facilitate that.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we don't want to be psychologically traumatized. Or me, I've got work to do. If I had remembered, I would be all about like me.
Yeah.
It wasn't my job. I want to research, not talk about my own encounters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I'm ready to remember now, so there's a little message.
Download it.
I'm ready.
Ready to go. Right. Next question. It's not it's a question, but it's not to what we've been talking about. Has Preston ever been to the UK? But I swear I know him from somewhere. That's from Ancient Ruby.
No, I haven't. I have got relatives there, ancient relatives. I mean, I'm 1/4 English, so
Right.
I have done a lot of podcasts, and I was on a popular TV show from England. Gosh, I don't remember it. It was a comedy show. Some guy called himself Mildred.
Right.
Was on there, and that got a lot of publicity for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a lot of fans out there in England. I love you guys. I can't wait to visit someday.
You'll be more than welcome.
I watched you a couple of weeks ago. You was on with Lon Strickler.
Yes.
Yeah, he was on. Was it about 2-3 weeks ago?
Phantoms and Monsters.
Yeah, Phantoms and Monsters. Yeah.
Oh, George and Mildred. Yeah.
Oh yeah, from the 70s.
Yeah.
70s, 80s.
70s. Yeah, 70s.
I love that show.
Mm. Yeah, Preston's George. Right, next question.
Yeah, sorry, I was dwelling on that one a bit.
From nickname, has Preston researched Antarctica and the poles?
Not personally, in terms of a first-hand witness. I try and follow what's going on there, but I read some stuff and I'm like, hey, there's disinformation and misinformation in this field. But you have to be super careful. There are researchers out there, and I won't name them because they're still alive and really,
For now.
I mean, they're quite prominent. But I don't trust them a bit, not one bit.
No.
And there are some who I will name. That's Donald Menzel, who was an astronomer who was a debunker. And we found out, according to Stanton Friedman, his research found out he was part of MJ-12.
Really?
He was an absolute debunker who said the UFOs aren't real and knew all along that they were.
Yeah.
Shame on him.
Right.
Even Philip Klass, I think he was a paid disinformant.
Yeah.
And there are a few who have admitted it. William Moore got involved with this, Richard Doty.
Yeah.
And there are some prominent researchers who I don't trust. And I think some of them are putting out stories about, Antarctica that aren't true.
Yeah.
They're unsupported. And I'm looking at it, I'm trying to follow some of these accounts about giant underground bases in the Antarctic and super soldiers on Mars. No, that's not, I don't believe it for a second. I have no cases like this.
Yeah.
You can't live on Mars for one thing. It's a dead planet. There's no magnetic field. You would be roasted in seconds by the gamma radiation.
Yeah.
So people who say they've spent 10 years on Mars are probably more victims of what we call MILABs.
Yes.
Military abductions, which is real.
Yeah.
And there are people who are having these experiences, which are very real, but they are disinformation and misinformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've looked into the Antarctic stuff. I think there is stuff going on up there. I know Wendell Stevens, very early on in his career, saw a lot of sightings up in, I believe it was the Antarctic or down in the Antarctic. And so perhaps there's activity there. Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if they find stuff that's very interesting and pertinent to this field. But I can't call myself a researcher of those areas. I'm mostly focused on people who've had first-hand contact. I find that there's a lot of pay dirt there. I mean, you can get some real info. Because I hate speculating. People are just have all these wild theories. How can you say this? Show me the evidence. Show me anything that supports what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, got to be careful in this field.
Yeah, you are. You're right. Right.
Yeah.
Next question. We've got 3 questions left.
Yeah.
That should take us nicely to the end.
Yes, perfect timing.
Yes.
So from Ancient Ruby, has Preston ever heard of a race called the Deborgans? Deborgans? I don't know, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, it
Looks
says.
right.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I've heard of the Borg on Star Trek.
Yeah, we've all heard of them.
Yeah.
No, I can't say that I have. I'm not saying that it's not valid, because
you'll have to jot that down and look into it now.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, this universe is practically infinite.
Yeah.
And if you look into the number of encounters, it's not in the thousands. It's in the hundreds of thousands, millions. I mean, this is a very active thing. We're only hearing about the tip of the iceberg, and ETs will give themselves various names to people. I mean, we've had ETs say, "Oh, we're from Mars," or "We're from Venus."
Yeah.
And we know they're not. So I think sometimes they will say stuff just to give sort of skeptics a way out. Like, they said they were from Venus. It's not real. I don't have to believe. I don't know. I don't like to speculate. People have said Zeta Reticula. That's what Betty and Barney Hill got. There's a couple of cases that talk about that. Yeah. Orion comes up a lot. Cygnus, I think, has been mentioned. Honestly, this is where research is really needed.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, often the ETs are reluctant to say exactly where they're from for good reason.
Yeah.
One couple asked them, they were not taken, they were invited on board, they said. And the lady asked, "Where are you from?" And they said, "We're from a place you don't know about yet." And another asked, and they said, "Oh, it's not important." But Betty Hill asked, and they said, "Well, do you know where you are on this map?" And she said, "No." And they said, "Well, then how would you know where we are?"
Yeah, fair point.
they're sometimes coy in their answers.
Yeah.
And I think that's because we are a very aggressive species who's on the verge of space travel and does have, to a limited extent, ET technology.
Yeah.
So they have to be careful because we're very warlike.
Yeah, I was going to say we also have weapons that we carry about with us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are all kinds of names out there that are true that I haven't heard. I don't think the Greys even call themselves the Greys.
No. Well, that leads into the next question, actually, from Johnny. Has Preston ever heard any accounts with the Dero or Terro said to live inside the Earth?
Yeah, that story originated with Ray Palmer in Astounding Magazine or Amazing Magazine.
Right.
So, no, I can't say that I have firsthand stories of this. However, I think there might be some truth to it.
Yeah.
Because if you go throughout the different cultures of our planet, there's a lot of stories of what we would look at as kobolds and elves and gnomes and various, what I guess, interdimensional beings who are 100% real and not extraterrestrials. We would think of them. Perhaps crypto-terrestrials would be a better term.
Yeah.
And I'll just mention the reptilians.
Yes.
The reptoids, the whatever you want to call them. I've got a few. I don't have a whole lot of cases of those, but I know that most researchers have got cases of these occasionally. The 2 or 3 I've got don't involve UFOs. It's people who see them out in the Everglades or maybe out in the forest, and there's no UFO associated with it. And there's one lady, she's a contactee from California and the East Coast, and she's absolutely convinced that these are beings who survived the dinosaur age.
Right.
And that's actually what Dolly said too.
Right.
I don't know that she's got direct knowledge of that. I'll have to ask her. But, I think that's what's going on here. That some of them do live underground on our planet. They're sentient. They are intelligent. They are advanced. So I think there's some truth to people that are not human, as we would think of it, living underground. But again, I think what's his name, Rhodes. He's a researcher who is really focused on the reptilians. I forget his first name, but I know his last name is Rhodes, Rhodes.
Yes, yeah.
He's focused a lot on the reptilians, but this is still largely an unprecedented era in human history in terms of modern times, because the modern age of UFOs began in 1947, and from that point on, we've had constant, ongoing contact, and it just wasn't like that before. We did not have these levels of activity, and I think it's because of the nuclear testing and we've been doing, and the fact that we've gotten so close to absolutely destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm speculating, but a lot of researchers have pointed out that the atomic era and the modern age of UFOs came at the same time. From that point on, we've had unprecedented levels of contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ETs around of all different kinds, and some do have bases, and some may be living underground.
Do you believe that some of them are walking around in the guise of humans as well?
Yes, I sure do. And that was another thing I was kind of reluctant to, believe in, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't really call myself a UFO believer. I just want to know, what I've seen. You know what I mean? There's a difference between belief and true knowledge. True knowledge comes from experience.
Yeah.
But I can say that there are people, and there are a lot of them, who have reported ETs in places where you would not think they would be.
Yeah.
Right.
I wrote a book called UFOs Over Nevada. I found like 6 cases. People have seen what they believe are ETs in casinos.
Wow.
No kidding.
Wow.
But Timothy Good, very prominent English researcher, said he saw a UFO or a human-looking ET at the Sheraton Hotel.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of many. There is John Hunter Gray.
Yeah.
Right before he and his son were taken on board, they saw a very peculiar guy at a gas station.
Yeah.
Debbie Cobble, who was used the pseudonym Kathy Davis in Bud Hopkins' book.
Yes.
She had an encounter with human-looking ETs on a RTD bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, at restaurants there are cases, gas stations, hotels, casinos. There was a lady from Bud Hopkins research who saw a gray on a subway.
Yeah.
There was another lady who saw an ET at Penn Station. No one seemed to notice it.
No.
It was
Wow.
right at her. So they have the ability to sort of, I'm not the droid you're looking for.
Look the other way.
Yeah.
There's another case in Florida, Lisa Ahrens. She was at a gas station and there was this gorgeous blonde guy who seduced her. Basically, she picked him up and drove home and they got intimate. And
Yeah.
she saw him in the mirror and he was not human. He was a gray.
Oh.
So they do have that ability to make you see them as human looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that does happen. Yeah, they are walking among us. And I think probably in larger numbers than people realize.
Yeah. Just need to keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah.
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 Look for people who are dressed strangely, who have very hypnotic, large eyes.
White skin.
Yes.
Yeah, who
Like the one I seen.
Yeah.
acting sort of peculiar.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's very hard to determine sometimes, but
It is.
Yeah.
if you look through the UFO literature, those cases are there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just tell you quickly. The one I seen, she is a female, white, really white skin, bright blue eyes, white hair. She must have been at least 6.5 to 7 foot tall.
Oh, wow.
It was in a shopping centre. She was there, turned around to talk to someone, turned back, gone. And it was, it was one of them. They would have had to pass you to move from where they was to where I was. Nothing. It was well weird.
Yeah,
That's
I've
the
heard that same
shortest version of that story ever.
Wow. Yeah,
It
Shen
is.
Kurz,
Yeah.
a young girl, a high school student, was at Westmoreland High School in New York.
Yeah.
Was approached by this very pale-skinned guy wearing weird clothes, very strange eyes, pointy ears.
Wow.
And he's asking all these peculiar questions, and she's rebuffed him and walked into the school, but quickly turned around. He was gone. Boom.
Yeah.
In a half second. She was later taken on board, and there he was. So she knows it was an ET. She saw him on board a UFO later.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
They're among us.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Last question then.
Last question.
It's from Nickname. What does Preston think is going on with Chris Bledsoe and his family? If you don't mind answering that one.
Yeah, no, not at all. He's a genuine contactee, 100% for sure.
Yeah.
I met him. Very kind guy, very sincere. I've read the research on his case. He's got some very good evidence. He was cured of Crohn's disease.
Right.
Yeah.
He had an encounter which was witnessed by his son and several friends. It's a multi-witness case with profound physical evidence. He's got photographic evidence up the wazoo. I mean, a lot of it.
Yeah.
He is a genuine contactee who, like all contactees, have a mission to some extent to wake people up to the ET presence on our planet and do what they can to usher humanity into a new age of awareness, so to speak. I think his case is genuine. They healed him. It's one of 300 cases. I wrote a book called The Healing Power of UFOs.
Yes.
Oh.
300 cases. And U.S. has the most, then Russia, then England, then Canada, then I think Puerto Rico, which is actually part of the U.S., but they have a lot.
Yeah.
It's all over the world. His is one of many people who've been cured of chronic conditions.
Yeah.
Not just Crohn's disease, but cancer and back pain and liver disease and kidney disease and cuts and bruises and heart disease.
Yeah.
Hepatitis, diabetes, diphtheria. I could go on. But the point is, most major researchers have cases like these. Philip Mantle does, I know.
Yes.
Jacques Vallée, Timothy Good has cases.
Yeah.
Barbara Lem, Yvonne Smith, John Mack, Bud Hopkins, Dr. David Jacobs. They all have healing cases. And this is further evidence that is being suppressed and ignored and not getting the attention it deserves. They are healing us. This is really good evidence that this is good news for humanity.
Yeah.
We should all be very happy that we have people out there who, you know, are not as untrustworthy as our own governments are.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Well, I'm just waiting now to be abducted and healed.
Yeah.
And then I'll be happy again. And they can sort me Wi-Fi out.
Wi-Fi out, yeah.
Yes.
Even if they don't do anything else, that'll be the best plan.
Yeah, it would. Anyway,
No
Preston.
required. No bills.
Yeah.
They just do it out of the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah. Free of charge.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on tonight. It's been really, really good. Really
Absolutely
enjoyed it.
loved it.
Can't believe
Thank
that 2
you.
hours went like 5
I
minutes.
know. That's the quickest it's ever gone.
No, we say that every time, but it's not just speeds
No,
up.
it really is.
It was a real pleasure, guys. Thanks very much.
Absolutely loved it.
You're welcome, and you're welcome on any time.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you want to come back, just give us a shout and we'll sort something out.
We'll shout you.
Let us know when.
I'll have to bring Dolly Saffron. I know she would love to share her story with you guys.
Yeah, well, I sent her my email. She's just emailed me. I can't speak now. Just emailed me her details.
Yeah.
And with the book. So yeah, if we get you both on, that'd be amazing.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I'd love it. Yeah.
We'll sort that out for next year.
Yeah. All 3 months away.
Yeah. No.
Just to cheer everyone up. Right. I'm just going to do a little video for Deborah.
Oh.
Because she loves this.
Me.
Are you ready?
Hey, who's our guest next time?
I have no idea.
I do.
So she never knows who the guest
do.
is the following week.
Next week we have Malcolm Robinson of the Scottish
Yay.
Paranormal. What is it?
He did the is it Sarchi Poltergeist?
Yep. Sarchi Poltergeist. Sorky, I think it's pronounced.
I thought it was Sarchi.
No, it's Sorky.
Soki.
Ask him about his schoolyard encounter. He had a sighting over a schoolyard. I wrote a book on it. I put him in there.
Yeah, it was telling us about that when we saw him.
We went up to there's a conference up in Hull in England, and he was one of the speakers there, and he was telling us about the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like the little schoolhouse in the grounds.
Yeah.
Amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully
Can't
he's
wait.
gonna.
Very cool.
Yeah. So massive thank you yet again for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Are you all right to hold on till we do the outro and have a quick chat before you shoot off?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Stay right there then.
Yes, thank you, Joe, for doing the modding. Thank you, everyone in the chat for your questions. And the chat family or whatever it is you lot call it. I don't know. But no, it's been great. On Wednesday, we are doing a live investigation going back to Kingsford Cemetery.
Yay!
That's going to be around about 7:30, but I'll put it on YouTube or I'll put it on Facebook. Not 100% on the time yet. And then if you can't make it to that, we'll see you on Friday. So
Malcolm Robinson.
Yes. So have a great weekend, everyone. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Take
and good
care.
night.
Good night.